Hey guys, thanks for tuning back into Panic Button, where we talk about mental health, right? And we figure it out together. We talk about what we're going through, and we just try to get through it. So I still can't believe that it's already February. At this point, like I have seen the weather over here in the Midwest go from like -10 up to like 50 the other day. I mean, and then people say global warming's not real, right? But I'm not, don't quote me on anything. I don't know. It just blows me, right? But the good part about the Midwest is we do get all of the seasons, and I'm hoping that spring is here before we know it. But all right, jumping into things that matter. Recently, I've dabbled in the idea of holding myself more accountable for my mood. And kind of what that looks like to me is just being, I know we talk about being present and giving ourselves grace, right? But I like to really go back to what has happened day to day that I could have changed that affects my mental health. So recently I've noticed I battle with a neck injury. So before I go on like a huge rant, because we do have a special guest joining us today, and you're going to definitely want to hear from her probably more than me. But what I like to do, not really, I don't like to do it, but I've noticed that my neck has been causing me a lot of vertigo. And then I've noticed that that vertigo causes me to panic. So it's kind of like a domino effect, right? So it's just been like super obnoxious recently, like sitting and working all day. And then like my neck is sitting and getting tensed up. And then I get up and I'm dizzy and nauseous. And then like my anxiety is like, now we have a reason to be worried. So I've noticed that about myself, and I know that's like a total rant, but I'm sure there's somebody out there that's also been like, yeah, I'm very self-aware of my body and anything can set me off. But that's totally me. So I don't know if anybody else is that way, but that's kind of like my 2-minute rant before introducing a really special guest that we have on this episode. We have Carrie Magnusson joining us. And just a little bit about Carrie is first and foremost, she's a mom, and she's on the stage of becoming an empty nester, and she's a mental health advocate. She's also a podcast host of Carry On with Carrie, which is incredible. I'm a huge fan of hers, and she's an artist. She's battled depression, anxiety, and PTSD most of her life. But she's on a mission to spread awareness and offer comparison to others who suffer with mental health, and to educate those that don't understand it. She believes that there is a way to end the stigma. And like I said, she is the host of Carry On with Carrie, and she comes from the perspective of personal experiences, and that with that taught compassion and understanding and the search of wellness. And her hope is really just to help one person at a time. Everyone has a separate journey and a modality that may work for them. And that's what she's all about, is just figuring it out. And that's kind of our mission here as well. So Carrie is a very special guest. We share a lot of mission values and just wanting to battle mental health and build this advocacy. So again, without further ado, Carrie.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good, Jess. Thanks for having me on here.
Yes, absolutely. Super excited. I've been a big fan of Carrie's. Her podcast is a little bit newer, as well as Panic Button, but she's got so much great insight. And it's, me and her have talked before, and it's like, we're the best example. When you live through mental health issues, you're the best person to talk about it. So we're all about being relatable. And yeah, I mean, she just does an incredible job of keeping the transparency. So Carrie, if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about your mental health journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's so important, as you just said, just to talk about it and be real about it. And that's what I loved about like when you connected with me, when we talked, and it was just a conversation. We could have kept talking for like hours. I think it was a good connection right off the bat. And we've got the same common goal. And so what got me started, that was the question, right? What got me kind of started on this? I've suffered with depression and mental health issues since as far back as I can remember, and anxiety along with that, which at one point I didn't even realize was anxiety. It was just, I thought that's just how it was, right? And so I grew up being very shy, and I had a child at 17, had a sexual assault before that, a whole bunch of different things that kind of an accumulation over time. And what finally got me onto the road of podcasting and sharing is just, how do I give back? I've had so many different peaks and valleys in my life, and when I'm down in the depths of despair, usually you come back out and you've got something you have to reach for to see the light. And that was the podcast for me. And when I look back, it's hard as a podcaster. I look back and I'm like, ugh, they're so horrible, the first ones, and I have to redo my intro, and it's like, what was I doing? But it's okay, because that's part of the journey, and it is what it is. And I'm just so far so impressed by the community itself and how supportive everybody's been. I don't know, how has your experience been so far?
Yeah, honestly, it's been very, very welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone loves to tell their story, in some capacity, as long as you give them the ability to do so, which is kind
That's
of
right.
my drive as well as yours as to why we do the podcast. I'm only one point of view, and I try to keep this as relatable as possible for different walks of life. But I believe everyone has a story to share, and their story deserves to be heard. So if
Mm-hmm.
I can give them a platform to do so, then I'm going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I kind of come from. And I don't know, for me, when I get stressed and upset, I lose my voice. And that's the time where I need to use it the most. And I think that's true for so many people. They just want to tell their story. They want to have it relatable to other people, or just find out a way to, like, how, if you don't have the resources to find out how to heal, how can you even begin? So
Yeah.
that's kind of my mission too on my podcast, is to get like you mentioned for in my bio, the modalities that are available. It's not just traditional Western, medicine. There's a ton of other things that especially now are accessible to us that maybe people just don't even know about.
Yeah, no, 100%. And
Yeah.
honestly, that's kind of another interesting topic as well, because, I got diagnosed in college, and
Mm-hmm.
I almost wish that sometimes I would have not just been written a prescription, I would have been given other tools. So the fact that all these years later, there are other tools and they're more accessible. I want to make people just as aware of those. I myself, full transparency, as I've always told you guys, I do take medication for anxiety and panic disorder. But one day I would love to not to, that's the goal, right? But
Right.
now, as I'm turning 30 this year, and it's just so painful to even say, but,
It was
now
right.
that I'm turning 30 this year, it sucks that I feel like I'm not ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I also do this podcast to inform those of these other outlets and everything like that you can find help in. And, sometimes that's not for everyone. And sometimes, your makeup is better with medication, but sometimes that's not the case for some people,
That's right.
and it's just, it's a hard pill to swallow when you know that you weren't given the correct resources, but you want to turn it around. And
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
kind of my journey that I'm on right now. And it sounds like you've also faced a similar, path where it's like, we want to really, we want to be advocates, right? That's what we are. But we
Mm-hmm.
also want to be able to tell people, like, there's a world out here that's willing to help. Like, we
Exactly.
want to help. People want to help. People want to hear it. They want to help. And we want to help each other get through.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's the thing is, I feel kind of blessed for the fact that, I mean, not everybody kind of wakes up to the fact that, oh, maybe now I need to start helping myself. But if that's because people stay silent about it. And the more we talk about it, like for instance, I had really bad postpartum depression after I had twins around the age of 30. And that was a tough time for me. I had a really hard time with 30 for some reason. And I didn't even
See?
know I didn't even know I did until it was there. Right? It's like, whoa, smacks you in the face. Like, where has my life
I think
gone?
it's
And
just the number, but I don't
it
know.
is. It is just a number. When I look back, like 30 is so young, and you have so much. Now that I'm 50, I just turned 50 this year, and I think that's probably why I went through another little breakdown. But
Oh, great.
um,
Now I know another one's coming in 20 years.
possibly, you never know. You might be in a place where it won't. But yeah, so that's like if I could. I spoke to somebody on my show, and she does hypnotherapy, and she does hypnotherapy for women going into birth, during pregnancy, the whole works, and how that can, like, you can actually go through this in a calm way. Like, this wasn't, apparently it's been available for a long time, but it's something that I'd never heard of. And so if I can help one other mother, like, oh, well, that's an option for me, that I can actually, maybe learn how breastfeeding and all the, crap that comes with it. No offense. I mean, I love being a mom, but it was a tough time. And anyways, that's, without having looked into this myself and starting this journey, I wouldn't have known about that option to share with somebody else. So that's kind of where it all comes from. And especially because when you do have, like, for myself, I have 3 sons, and one of them, I
Oh,
think, yeah, and it
I
you
have
just,
one. I could feel your pain, but three, I don't know.
yeah, I know. And they're so good, but like, I once they get older, you worry, and you almost worry more about their, because you see how the world has changed. It's hard for guys to navigate. We talk about women a lot, but it's hard for guys to navigate through their anxiety and depression. So it's also important for me to get men on the show, hear it from their side, so that we can start getting them to open up. And if they open up, then naturally speaking, the women will feel more comfortable speaking, let's say, to their boss, to their husband, to their father, to their son, about the issues they're having, and where can they start relating, and it just becomes a normal conversation. And I always go back to, it just becomes a normal conversation, because that's what we want, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I have a 3.5-year-old son, so
Okay.
I know I have a lifetime of worrying ahead of me. But yeah, I mean, I guess, me, I obviously I've battled with mental health for almost 10 years now, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to be the biggest advocate for him. And at such a young age, now more than ever, we're seeing 5 years old kids have anxiety, 6 years old kids having anxiety, depression, anything. And it's sad. And we want to protect our clan, we want to protect our people.
Yeah.
So, it almost starts right at home with me, with him. I want him to know that talking about mental health at whatever age is okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that is more of what we need, especially with parents, to acknowledge that this is real. And it might not have been something that they worried about when they were growing up, but it happened. Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people now that say that some of their issues started at home, when they
Yeah.
were kids. When you go to therapy, we talk about our childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and how you were raised and what happened behind closed doors.
Yep.
So it starts at home too. And we got to protect these kids, and we have to let them know that it's okay. It's a safe place.
Uh,
I'm here for it all, and it's so important though with these kids, because we didn't have those resources. I didn't, and obviously you didn't. And there's so many people in this community that I've talked to, and I'm sure you have as well, Carrie,
yeah.
that wish they knew before what they know now.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's that easy. Like, it could be that easy. Even I interviewed somebody I was a teen mom, I mentioned at this top of the show, and I it was a hard time to navigate. And I always wanted to give back to that community. I wound up having the Terra Center for Teen Moms, or teen parents, on my show, and the things that they're offering them, so that they can actually move out into this world and be good parents, so that we stop that cycle of dependency and abuse and, like you said, anxiety as a kid. So especially if you're in an environment where you're scared, you don't have money, and you're still a child yourself trying to parent another human being. Anyways, these are all things that, like, I could just go on and on for hours about all the different sides of it. But I just learned from a psychologist again the other day too about, so if you have any kind of triggers, right? And you mentioned childhood, um, perhaps something happened to you and it was the smell, and it was kind of an event that really impacted you as a kid. And it doesn't have to be big or small. Apparently, sometimes, when you see that trigger in somebody, they yell at you or they start crying, or it's just a over emotional response. It's because it kind of takes you back to that age that you were at when maybe a particular thing happened to you and that trauma occurred. And it doesn't have to be like you got, it was the worst thing in the world. It could have just been, somebody in class laughed at you, or your mom raised her voice, and maybe something bad happened after that. But anyways, I found that really interesting. And because I mean, once you delve into this world of mental health, you start to hear all of the stuff, and sometimes it just finally clicks, like, oh, okay, so maybe when,
Oh,
if you've
that's
ever,
why.
yeah, like, oh shit, okay, like, but now it's learning how to control those emotions, right? You have you done EMDR? I think we talked about that.
I have not, but I mean, feel free to explain that to everyone. That would be beneficial.
Yeah, so EMDR, I actually, let me look up the exact word because I always forget what the acronym stands for. I movement something. EMDR. Um, Sorry, just give me one sec.
Oh, you're fine. We
Rapid
just,
eye movement therapy is what it's called. So basically, what it is, it's if you've seen almost like the tapping that's new, they use your sight, and they'll like use their hands to go back and forth on, um, and it kind of redirects your thoughts, and so that you almost lose them in a way. Like it refiles them and recenters them into a different place. That's the best way it's being described to me. It's the only way I can describe it to others, but it's a
sure.
treatment. And counselors use it all the time now, and it's becoming a lot more prevalent. So maybe those emotions that you're having can be, you'll learn how to control them because your memories aren't as tied to that exact moment. Right?
Okay.
It's almost
Yeah.
like going through a maze. And again, I apologize to
I don't
anybody out
like
there who's
mazes,
professional.
Carrie.
Yeah, neither do I. And when I'm having it done, I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, why? I don't even understand what's happening to me. But I'll go back and try to remember something that was very traumatizing, and I just don't have that same emotional response to it now.
Huh.
Yeah. So that's the best way I can describe it. Like I said, I'm not an expert, and I'm sorry to anybody that's listening to this and thinks, oh geez, she's totally butchering what EMDR is.
This is our hobby, so be nice to us.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
Oh my God. No, I love it. Yeah. I mean, and I think that, I mean, you see a lot now of specific therapists, right? Like there's trauma therapists who specialize in like the effects of trauma on the brain and how trauma can correlate to anxiety and depression and all these other things that it comes with. So I would assume that that's a great tool for them as well. And, and all of these other therapists that are coming out that specialize in a specific area for mental health, like
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
incredible. It's like an open door of all these things that we've never known that didn't work before, that we didn't try. And, the technology has grown. And I mean, it's honestly, it's a good time to have a mental illness, as crappy as that sounds. it's a
right?
it's a better time,
Yeah,
compared to our parents and our grandparents and their parents and their parents. Um, and that's why we do this, right? To
that's right.
show people that this is a better time, this is a safer time. Like we can figure this out. You don't need to be ashamed of dealing with this because the reality is in one way or the other, we all are.
Right.
It's either in our family, it's either a friend, a neighbor, anything. It's we're all dealing with it.
Yeah, and that's where I don't know if you believe in that, but I mean it's just the way generational trauma is an actual thing. I mean, and that's why like our you said it right. It's you made a good point there with it's weird to say that we're in a good place with mental health right now
I
in
know
this
I'm probably gonna
time.
offend somebody, but I didn't mean that
Well,
badly.
no, but it's true because they didn't have the resources. Like, I mean, if I think of some of the stuff that I've gone through, and I've been put in I've had time in the hospital, in the psych ward, and in day hospital, and all that stuff because of my depression. I have major depressive disorder, and sometimes it just sucks me down to that place. And I just think back, like in the 50s or the 40s, what would they have done with me? Would
Yeah, yeah.
they have given me lobotomy? You know, like yeah,
Harry.
well, you really like, and I'm not that bad. I don't have like I'm not, and it's okay. And I shouldn't say that because I don't want to offend anybody because that's the whole point of this is like it's we have to try to be a little bit positive about how far it's come in a fairly short time because if you look at like the history of the world, this is a fairly small clip of time that we've had so much advancement in it. And I guess that's the one of the benefits of social media is that we can actually speak up and say something to other people and kind of spread that word. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
there's a handful of people that'll tell you that, social media is bad for mental illnesses. And to some extent, that could be true, right?
yeah,
Sometimes we get addicted to our phones or, watching the news on your phone or this or that, all those triggers that can cause anxiety. But, again, yeah, it just goes back to we're in such a better place
hmm,
that social media is so powerful.
yes,
And yeah, it's done a lot of good and it's done a lot of bad, but
well,
it's
yeah.
just, we have to manage it, right? Like
Mhm.
anything else in doses.
For sure. And the thing that I've talked now about this on a few shows is being careful of the buzzwords right now, especially surrounding mental health. You know, narcissism is a big one.
Sure.
PTSD, ADHD is huge, and you have to be careful not to and like not everybody is a narcissist. Just because your ex-boyfriend was an asshole doesn't mean that is he a true narcissist. You can't diagnose people with these things, and I think that sometimes that can also play with somebody's mental health because if a guy's scrolling through TikTok and he's seeing this and this and say I called him a narcissist, then somebody else, it's a very slippery slope. And I think that it's a personality disorder and it's a serious thing. And educating yourself behind like the reasonings for it and maybe stop the judgment as much because they use that to cope based on something that did happen to them as a child.
Yeah. I
So I
mean, we're
mean,
not all doctors too. Like, I think a lot of us like to tend to self-diagnose. And like, at the end of the day,
yeah.
like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to tell somebody like, if you're acting out that you're X, Y, and Z or have X, Y, and Z issue, and
Mhm.
this needs to be a safe place. People need to be able to be themselves.
That's right. Yes. And that's so you can see that side, but I think that sometimes it can be scary for somebody who's, maybe not ready to heal and they're in that place and they're just seeing these over and over and over these things. And I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but like you can go down a whole rabbit hole there on social media.
Well, yeah, and I think at some point it's very, another buzzword I think personally is trigger. Because before we didn't like all of a sudden this term came out of nowhere. We
Right.
weren't really using the word trigger, but then it populated itself and now we say this triggers me, this was a trigger, this was that. So you have to be careful, but we also need to have like a little bit of faith in each other, I think, to know that not everyone has an ill intent,
That's
right?
right.
And I think at the end of the day, you need to speak your truth and you need to share your story, and whatever that looks like, whatever you're comfortable with,
Hmm.
someone will relate and this group will accept it. You will be accepted. No one's gonna bat an eye at you or look at you like you got 14 eyes. I think this community is just so like, it's just so welcoming in the best way possible when you don't think you're welcomed anywhere.
That's right. I agree, and that's the experience I've had so far, and I've gone on a few other podcasts or had another podcaster on mine, and they did warn me. They said it's not always like that, so just to prepare yourself. And that's part of, like, I know for myself, because I do have my own mental health, and I'm a pretty sensitive person. I'm an empath, so when you're in that realm, you also have to remember you might come across somebody who maybe doesn't have the right intent, um
Sure.
and learning the skills of how to, like, allow, that's somebody else's thing. That's who
Yep.
they are. They're hurting. You don't have to deal with that, right? Like, it's not yours, but that's a hard, like, it's easy to say,
Yeah, it's
but
easier said than done.
yeah. Yeah. And have you come across any of that yourself?
I don't think that I have necessarily. I mean, I'm also, I think, an empath, and I think that when you have so much built up anxiety, you tend to, think that everybody in the room is talking about you, right?
Hmm.
And think that, everyone is out to get you. I mean, I take things very personal.
Hmm.
So dealing with this space specifically, I've tried to disconnect that part of me because, I'm just being vulnerable. I'm being open and I'm being honest, and that's not an easy skill for people to do.
Especially
So
with anxiety.
right, especially with
Yeah.
anxiety. So I just think that I've done a great job of disconnecting that part of my brain when I'm in this, like, safe place that I've created for us to be open and honest and transparent and just tell you what I'm going through, because I'm a survivor of this at the end of the day.
Hmm.
And what someone says to me, I'm not going to let that take me off my track. But that's not the reality of it for a lot of people. Like you said, you've had a handful of instances as well. But, I just think that we need to just be so concerned about ourselves that you
Yeah.
can't let anybody else matter at that point when it comes to your mental health.
Exactly, and you have to turn that off, and that's where the self-care comes in. And I've only had a couple of experiences so far, thank goodness, and one was just the other day, and somebody else's, I had commented on men's sorry, a men's mental health Instagram post, and it was, they put a video out there about, like, it's okay for guys to speak up, and I'm like, oh, I love this. This is time, right? Because I truly mean it. And somebody put, oh yeah, here she is pretending to care about men's mental health. And I thought, oh, like, I mean, that's his opinion because he doesn't know me from Adam. But um, what I found interesting was that the Instagram page actually took that post down. So that's where this
Wow.
community is very supportive, because there is no time for that. If I get, that's my biggest thing. It's like, do I comment on somebody's negativity? No, I don't add fuel to that fire. I get rid of it on my post, and I don't even have to look at it. So yeah,
Right.
I might think about it for, a little bit here and there. Like, oh, and sometimes maybe it'll teach me something. Like, do I come across as genuine? I don't know. Again, that's overthinking, but that's my anxious brain too.
Right,
Like,
right. Well,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But what I found fascinating was that they took it down. They didn't leave space for it. And so if
And
we do
that's
more of that,
yeah, that's what we
yeah,
need.
that's right. So yeah, that's been my experience so far. And like I said, it was just in May that I started the podcasting life, and I love every minute of it. It's like, it's almost like therapy for yourself, and
God, it so
um,
is.
isn't it? I love it.
It is. Like, honestly, like, even if I'm having an off day, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go record an episode, because sitting here
Hmm.
talking to myself and like getting it out is just a therapy that no one can take away from you, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
It's like, it's honestly how people find so much success in journaling. And I wish I could journal more, but I'm so go, go, go with work and being a mom and taking care of other things that, like, it's harder for me to just sit and write it down. I'd rather take the time to sit and talk about it, and then it's out. And it's
That's right.
like such a relief, and like that you just instantly feel that stress off your shoulders.
Hmm. Yeah, it's true. And that's okay. So when I've any time that I'm going, I don't know if I already mentioned this or not. Any time that I've ever gone through a hard time, I lose my voice. My mom always said, I can tell when you're not happy because you stop singing. Because I make up songs about whatever and drive my sister crazy as a kid. Like we'd be driving past a store and I'd make a song out of it. But anyways, but when I stop singing, I that's when I'm not happy, and I don't always notice that, but the people around me notice it. And for me, that lump in my throat, and that's literally the sign now. I can pick up on it pretty quick now. So I think that's partly why I got drawn to this as well. Because yeah, I journal a little bit here and there, but I'm the same way. I like, and I'm not a big talker to other people. I like to listen. But this is my way of getting my voice out there, without, I don't know, that I
No, I
totally,
totally get it.
yeah. And because I have anxiety, I often think after okay, so you said about being in a room, being judged, all that stuff. That's how I am. And when you said that, it's actually nice to hear. It's not nice to hear because I don't want you to have to go through that either, but just that you can relate. And,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll often leave a room. I'm like, maybe that's why I don't want to leave the room, like be the first person to leave a party. Like what are they going to say about me after? And isn't that just ridiculous? Like, who cares?
right?
But in my mind, I'm like, well, what did I say? What did I do? Do they like me? Are they mad at me? Things like that. And it's just such ridiculous thoughts that if I was to talk to a friend and they were saying that, I'd be like, no, of course not. It's not like that at all. But anxiety really does rear
Yeah,
its
and
ugly
trying to
head.
give yourself that advice to yourself is like pulling teeth, like all
Yeah.
day I can deal with people having anxiety and talking them down and suffering from a panic attack or anxiety attack. But when it comes to myself, I'm like, that goes out the window, like all of that just like flies out the window.
So what do you do to kind of get through that, or to bring yourself out of that? Do you have anything
Yeah,
that
so recently what I've noticed works, and I've mentioned this in an episode or so, I am a huge ice pack believer.
right?
However you want to mark that down. But I love getting an ice pack, putting it on my head, putting it on the back of my neck.
Okay.
And that's kind of like my zen, where I'm like, okay, I can feel the attack is coming. Let's just figure it out. Let's relax. Try to talk yourself down. And honestly, I sit there and I focus on one thing.
Right.
I find one thing in the room and I look at it and I bring myself back to reality. I'm like, you're okay. And my
Mm-hmm.
favorite thing is telling myself that I'm safe,
Right.
because too many times we're convinced by panic, anxiety, whatever it looks like, that we are not safe. You're
Mm-hmm.
convincing yourself that you're in a dangerous situation, that you may not make it out of this situation. So I like to remind myself that I'm safe and that I'm okay. It's going to pass. And I know that it's funny. I don't know if you feel this way, but you might. As I always joke about how time feels to someone that suffers a mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like when you're at such a heightened anxiety level, your sense of time is so skewed, it's unbelievable. Where you
Oh,
think you've been sitting somewhere for like an hour, right? Like panicking, and it's
mm-hmm.
been maybe like 10 minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not like I'm making fun of it, but I love it because I do make fun of myself. Because if I don't, like, what good am I doing then if I'm not laughing at myself? But
Exactly.
recently I've started like a timer,
Oh.
and, because like how I think about it is I set a timer when I'm starting to feel a little off, and then I
Mm-hmm.
stop it to see how long it actually lasted. So
Right.
let's say, for instance, kind of dealt with a situation for like 10, 15 minutes of not feeling the best. I'm like, it was only 10 to 15 minutes out
Right.
of the entire, 24 hours in a day. It was 10 to 15 minutes. So I've noticed that like holding myself accountable in that sense has helped me.
Yeah.
But I'm still learning, because sometimes I do go from like 0 to 100. And I think that's more of the panic disorder that I suffer with, that it's just, sometimes it's hard to bring it back. But, and I'm a huge Lego dork. I love
Oh yeah,
Legos. I've
nice.
talked about that before.
I love
Still waiting
Legos
for
too.
Lego to sponsor me.
Wouldn't that be awesome? I love Lego. I grew up before, like when I did Lego, built Lego. We didn't have the kits and stuff, and I think those are awesome too. And it's like, it kind of helps with problem solving and figuring out stuff like that. But we had nothing like that. It was just the pieces, and they were all over the floor in different colors with. And I would sit, that's some of my favorite memories, is sitting on the ground. And I was a tomboy, so I had my cars too. Like my sister played with Barbies and I played with cars. And yeah, I'd make my little villages out of Lego. So yeah, I totally can relate to the Lego thing.
Okay,
I
then
love it.
Lego needs to sponsor both of us, please.
Okay. We'll start our
Because
own
I
show.
make the joke, like, and it's, again, I'm not picking fun at anyone, but if we don't laugh about the situations that we're in, then, life's not that serious, right?
That's
So,
right. And yeah. And you know what else helps is like the thing that helps put you in the present the most is when you're like, you forgot to clean up that one piece of Lego and you step right on it. It's like, damn.
well, that ruins your whole day at that point,
That's
too.
right.
Because it hurts for like a good, like, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah. So, I
And it's like,
mean,
this
like,
damn little block just tried to kill me.
that's right.
Yeah,
So, anyway,
honestly, but it's just it's funny because like going back to like or continuing on the Lego topic is I did, like I said, I made the joke, and again, I'm not here to offend anyone. I'm just trying to be honest and transparent, and I made the comment in my podcast episode a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I need Lego to sponsor me because these panic attacks are getting expensive. I was like, and I cannot keep affording to buy these sets of Legos.
right? It's not, it's unfortunate actually that it's so expensive, but yes, Lego needs to sponsor you. I'll put that, when I'll have to put a Lego thing up on my story next time
Right?
with the episode.
Yes. Tell
Lego,
them all. Tell
yeah,
everyone. I haven't
we
even
love.
met somebody that works there yet. It's depressing.
No, actually, that's true. I've never heard of like, what is it like to work for Lego,
Right?
right?
I would
We
just
need.
play all day. I couldn't. I mean, I'd be of no help to them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. Well, maybe that's a show that you have to look into. Like, how does,
Right?
psychologically speaking, how is it like to, or what is it like to work for Lego?
Right?
You might
Oh
be
my
surprised,
gosh.
Jess.
I know,
Yeah,
seriously.
yeah,
Yeah, so, kind of bouncing off the Lego idea, bringing me back to like childhood and your childhood. What's
yeah.
kind of like your take on like battling anxiety as a kid and like anxiety running like in a family? Because I know you and I have talked about that before.
hmm Yeah, so as a kid, I think I mentioned too, I was really shy. Growing up, my dad, for his job, he was a sales guy and he was really good at what he did. So they would get him to manage the locations that opened. And so we moved subsequently from that. We moved every 3 years. And as somebody like myself who was shy and anxious and had a hard time getting to know people because of my anxiety, it was made even harder from that. But at the same time, my dad did what he had to do to make, the family work. And um, I think my mom always had some anxiety. So it runs in the family. How did I deal with it then? I dealt with it by maybe closing off. I also dealt with it by trying to make my family laugh when I was a kid. So I would get up in the living room and I'd just start dancing and making a fool of myself and leaping through the
Oh,
air like a
story of my
ballerina.
life.
Did
Story
you
of
do
my
that
life
too?
till today.
Okay.
No, I do it as an adult now. It's even
So do I.
worse.
So do I. That's so funny. That's awesome. But that's where, if I got a laugh out of somebody, it made me feel a little bit more secure, right? And I think that's where the humor part comes in. And I think that can actually be a huge, huge thing for somebody with anxiety if you can make a joke about it and be aware of the fact that it is, just to lighten up that thing a little bit. But I guess I'm not sure if I'm answering your question the way you wanted, but like anxiety growing up, yeah, because of the moves and stuff like that, it just built up and my self-esteem was low. So then the anxiety takes over even more. And how did I deal with it? Is that kind of what you're wondering, or?
Well, yeah. So, because a lot of our viewers are like a little bit on the cusp of younger because this is becoming a younger issue, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Where we're seeing children being diagnosed with these things. So I understand, like, that everything starts at home.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
So I know that we've talked about that before with like anxiety running in your family, but like, do you think that you carried that throughout your adulthood then too because you didn't deal with it as a kid?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely. And because, again, we didn't have the resources at that time. Like, yeah, I went to therapists and stuff, but it's evolved so much since then. And um, for me, if I was a kid looking back and like trying to tell my younger self, I would pat myself on the back and say, "You're okay. You're doing your best. It's okay to tell your mom and dad that you're sad, or it's okay that to tell a teacher that you're scared." And I think that's the thing with mental health right now. If I could talk to a young person right now and, you know, don't be ashamed of the fact that maybe you're a little different than other people, but we're all different. We all bring
Yeah.
something amazing to the table. And that little bit of light in you is what the right people will see, and you'll gravitate towards them. So just keep strong in your conviction, be strong for yourself. And my mom always said, love yourself first. And I've often, up until this year, I've said, well, how do I do that? What is that? How do I love myself? And I'm just learning it now. It's like, if you hear it so often, the oxygen mask has to go on yourself first. And it doesn't mean that you're living an ego or anything like that. It means give yourself compassion, look yourself in the mirror. All these young people that are just like, I'm not good enough, I don't compare to the people on Instagram, whatever they're thinking. It doesn't matter. And you compare to just yourself, and you don't have to compare to anybody else, because literally 5 minutes after somebody's seen you, and sometimes even sooner, they don't have a clue. They don't think about you. And that's not in a negative way. They're just like, they're moving along in their life and they are
Right.
going about their day. And that thing that you might have thought really, like, you embarrassed yourself, you said the wrong thing, um, who cares? Because literally, like, maybe sometimes 5 seconds after, they forget that happened because they're now moving along their day. So those are little hints. Like, a therapist said that to me one time. Like, if you're walking down the mall and somebody sees you and you think they looked at you funny because, like, um well,
I mean, I'm a
did
little
they?
funny looking, but I get it.
Right, right. And like, they're not gonna like think about this for the next week. Like, I can't believe I saw that woman who I don't know.
Right.
So, just wear the clothes that you want to wear. Um, do your hair the way you want to do it. If you don't want to do, like, if you don't want to wear makeup, or you just want to, I don't know, like, I just think of all the time I wasted. Like, when I was a kid, I thought that I have fairly blonde hair, and I thought my arms were hairy. So in high school, I wore long sleeves every day. And I'm like, I didn't even, like, how silly is that? When I look back, my
You're
arms
not
were
alone,
hairy.
so I know
Right.
it's,
I know. And
somebody else has done it.
that's right. And so, and I shouldn't say that. I don't mean that in a negative way, that I was silly and I wasn't doing the right thing. It's just what I knew at the time.
Yeah.
And that's the things I would say to myself, like, who cares? And nobody's thinking that. And if they are, then that's just their issue. That's something that they're insecure about themselves. So, anyways, yeah, that's my soapbox.
No, and I love it. I just absolutely like love your take on things, and the positivity is huge. And we do want to be mental health advocates, and we do want to be a positive force in this community. And I've talked about it with other people that advocacy that starts within you.
Hmm.
I need to be the biggest advocate for me and what my mental health needs and what my happiness looks like. So, yeah, 100%. I wish I had this confidence when I was younger as well. And I
Yeah.
wish that I was told that it was okay. I've always had a super, super supportive family.
Mm-hmm.
I came out actually as gay when I was 20 something years old,
Right.
and nobody batted an eye, but and I know, again, that's not the reality for a lot of people. I was
Yep.
very, very lucky and very, very fortunate. But yes, it definitely resonates, I think, with a lot of people, that if you could tell your younger self something, especially if you're dealing with mental health issues at home, or, not in the best position, fuck it. Honestly, fuck it.
Yeah.
You need to do what makes you happy. You need to advocate for yourself, and you need to be your biggest fan.
That's
And
right.
everybody else will flock towards that energy. The right people will come, the wrong people will go. And you need to have that positive mindset that it's going to get better, and we're going to figure it out, and we're going to get through it.
That's right. And trust your gut. That's like the biggest thing. If I could go back and say, if something's not feeling right and it continues to not feel right, it's not right. And trust that. Nothing, if it's too good to be true, all that kind of stuff. And that's part of where the confidence comes in, and the loving yourself. If you start listening to that intuition that you have at a young age, like if you're not getting a good vibe from somebody and it continues to feel that way, then you know trust that feeling. And I mean, if you get proven wrong, that's wonderful. But I don't know if does that resonate with you too? Like
Yeah, I
I
think our instincts don't lie. I think that we're
yeah,
very instinctive people, and we do, we're in a society of too many choices.
exactly. Yeah.
And you need to follow your heart and trust your gut and that instinct. And I mean, I've never really been strayed the wrong way when I've trusted my instinct. And, even if I've been around people that I thought haven't been the best people to be around, you live and you learn. And
That's
those
right.
instincts ended up being correct. And, you know, you go from there, and it's fine. You
Mhm.
figure it out. We adapt to so many situations that we don't give ourselves enough credit for, because we kind
Yes.
of like, dig ourselves into a hole sometimes, and just get so down on ourselves for dealing with these issues. And it's like, if we just took a second to see that we're not alone, and
Mhm.
that we could follow what our heart is saying, we can do so much.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I I actually I don't know why this came to me while you were saying that, but I just heard somebody talk about, how we always say kids bounce back and they're so resilient, and like when something traumatic happens, it's like, oh, they can take it kind of thing, right? And I mean, we all have to, because that's just life. Things come at us and we have to take it. But there's things that, like actually the EMDR itself, that I was talking about earlier. If a really traumatic event happens to a kid, you can actually use EMDR to stop that from being a traumatic issue when they get older. There's things that can
Wow.
happen. Like if we actually take a look at the psychology of our children when they're young, and that's where some of the support comes in. If I had known that, we had a few traumatic things happen when my kids were young, and that's one of where shame and guilt comes in, and you think, oh, I wish I'd been able to understand how to help them through it, right? And if I'd known about that, it might have only taken a few sessions, and that would be something that they gained. They don't have to carry on. They don't have to. No pun intended. They
Oh,
don't
I
have to.
like it. I see what you did there. You totally
Yeah,
did that on purpose. Don't lie.
yeah,
You're not getting paid for that,
right.
Carrie. Unless
Yeah, so,
Lego is listening, then we'll take
right.
it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. But yeah, that's if I'd known that, and it was like one of those. It's like exactly what we're trying to do. One of those tools that could help a parent come up. Like I didn't know that until I talked to a psychologist last week, and she explained the whole process. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know kids could go through EMDR, and so yeah, that's where the awareness begins. And so if we can, as a child with anxiety, if we can try to lessen that as much as possible when they are young, and give them the tools to learn how to deal with it without hiding it, without having to self-harm, without having to do all the things. And like you said, the LGBTQ society, world is, hiding, and not everybody has the experience that you have. And where do they go, and who do they talk to, and why can't we just freaking move on and get over it already?
Well, it's like we want to talk
Yeah,
about things that matter. Like, really?
yeah, I
Let's figure
know.
it out. Let's worry about the real problems in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I'm so happy that you reached out to me, because I really do. Um, you have such a great presence about you, Jess, and I'm really rooting for you, and I'd love to have you on my show. I know we talked about that, but like I could see a lot more conversations if you're ever willing to. I just really, yeah. Anyways, I would I
Well,
always do that.
I'm completely flattered. To be fully honest with everyone, me and Carrie really hit it off first, even just talking. I mean, a lot of, when you know, and me and Carrie have even like an age difference, and it's still as if we're two kids just talking and shooting the shit.
Yeah. Right.
And I appreciate the value that you bring, and everything that you stand for is incredible. And your story resonated with me so much. And you just have so much value to give to this community. So yeah, I mean, right back at you, sister. Like, I
Yeah.
think this isn't the end of our conversation, and everyone's probably like, oh shit, they're gonna do it
I know,
again.
right?
But yeah, we're going to do it again. I think we're going to do it a couple times because people need to hear it. And we're both so passionate about making sure that people hear it and people know.
Hmm.
And, like me and you have talked about before, like, if we don't do it, who's going to do it?
That's right. Yeah. Somebody has to stand up and do it, and it takes an army. It's not just, or it takes a village. I don't like to use army, that's too aggressive. It takes a village to make these changes happen. And yeah, the more people, like I said, I like to help one person at a time. And if one person hears it and their friend shares it, and it's something that somebody needed to hear, that's all I need. That's all I shouldn't say I need, because that sounds like it's all about me, but I want, I just, yeah, it's just so
It
important to
gives you
me.
purpose. It gives
It gives
back.
me
It
purpose.
really does. I totally
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
It just takes one person to make that change. And again, I'm just beyond honored that this community has brought me to you. Um,
Hmm.
without us coming together, we maybe would have never have known each other. I actually guarantee you we would have never have known each other. So
That's
I'm
right.
so happy for the opportunities that this community is starting to finally recognize the value in these conversations. We're all starting to recognize, like you said, if I know that one thing that I said that resonated with somebody or helped somebody, that's it. That's all it
Mhm.
takes. And
That's
that's
it.
all I need. And if
And
it doesn't, it doesn't. But
that's right.
I
And
know
that's
that
okay.
we're relatable still because we're
That's right.
not alone.
Yeah. And I think that even just the fact that you brought up the anxiety as a child, I think that if your demographic is some people listening that really need to hear this, oh my God, if we helped even just one young woman or young man be like, I don't have to deal with this. Oh my God, I can go try this. And yeah, I again am too, yeah. Don't you sit back and think.
Viewers find you. What is the best social media way to get a hold of you?
I'd say probably Instagram is my biggest platform right now. I am Carrie on with Carrie _ podcast. And I am also on Facebook, but I don't utilize Facebook the way I do Instagram. I also have a TikTok page. You can actually find my link tree in my Instagram bio. So anywhere there, if you wanted to email me and request to be on the show, it's Carry On with Carrie podcast at outlook.com. And yeah, I just want to hear all the stories. I want people who maybe haven't felt like they have a voice to speak up, and I would love for people that have some information and some advice on different ways to heal. I want to hear it all, anything to do with mental health. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, 100%. We're here for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
that's right, exactly. Yeah, and that's mental health. It's a
Yep.
part of our body like any other organ, and I just find it still amazing that we do not recognize that fact.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah,
But, I think you and we're going to change it. We're going to figure it out.
absolutely. Yes.
I'm here
One,
for that. All right,
yeah.
Carrie, I really do appreciate it. We loved having you on here. And to everyone listening, there's more to come here. You can tell me and Carrie could talk for hours. Please go follow her, go on her show. She's great. She's awesome. Everything that this community needs. And again, we're not going to push that panic button. We're going to figure it out. Till next time, guys. Thank you again, Carrie.
Thank you.